Hello, you are listening to the NextGen Planners podcast. NextGen Planners is a brilliant financial planning community with just about the most supportive membership you can find. We strive for inclusion and best practice throughout our profession and the industry as a whole. Each week we take a dive into an aspect of your profession with honest conversation, fresh ideas, and provoking thoughts from insightful individuals inside and outside of financial services. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Hello, welcome to the NextGen Planners podcast. This is another TechStack special, and today we are joined by the CEO of Origo. Many of you will know who he is. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, Adam. Good to see you.
Let's get stuck into it. So, like usual with the TechStack sessions, we're going to refer you to the show notes for any background on Origo or Anthony, but you can take it from me that he is very well versed and he's been in our industry for many years and understands the problems. But what we're going to first talk about, Anthony, is what's new and interesting that you're starting to see in financial planning, or the financial services bit that you're seeing from your side.
I think probably the big thing, the first thing that springs to mind is, to go on about it, is consumer duty. Definitely I've been around speaking to quite a number of firms, as well as providers and platforms, and I think the penny's finally dropping, actually, that this really is quite a significant thing, and that the FCA really mean it. All the things that we've been saying, and we've seen some early changes from some quite big businesses. Don't need to go into that, but what they're doing, it's had implications for share price and so on. So that's probably the first thing I would mention, which is, okay, so this is the real deal. How do I evidence that I'm compliant, that I am indeed, giving value? I think, I can't think of any financial services firm who should be worried that they're not doing the right thing by the consumer. They've got the consumer at the very heart. This is why your members get into the industry, to do that. But I think the tricky bit's evidencing it. So I think that'll be a theme over the next few months and years as to how firms will evidence it. I think the other theme I would pick out is just the cost to serve a customer. Is really something that people are focusing on a lot more these days. There's lots of examples of it, but just the amount of different systems that financial advice businesses need to use, and the fact that they typically don't talk to each other, the fact that they often have to interact with financial service businesses, as they're either serving existing clients or winning a new client or whatever. And that's just the cost to do that, the time it takes to do that, is a big thing. I saw the other day there, which it just made me very sad. There is a service out there that financial advisors can pay for another business to wait on the phone while the phone gets answered. That's just, what world are we living in? That is a thing. Yeah. So those are the two I'd pick out, is the consumer duty really beginning to become real and relevant, and having to evidence that, and then just how do I get the cost to serve down? Because this industry makes it difficult.
So as a company at the moment, obviously you're guiding a company in our sector. Are those the two main focus areas for you guys at the moment, or is there anything on the radar that's popping up that you think we maybe need to think about that over the next few years?
Yeah, I suppose the thing that's popping up, and we're beginning to think about it, is data, which sounds ridiculous given Origo, by the very nature of what it does, is about getting data from A to B, whether it's a transfer or an integration or the pension dashboard, whatever it might be. But actually, what more can be done with the data, and how valuable is the data from a consumer's perspective, is a thing that's on the radar. I think, again, there's definitely a theme worldwide that consumers are waking up to, which is, actually, my data is quite valuable, and I am concerned about how secure it is, first of all, but also what are people doing with it. And I'm not comfortable that actually, without my knowledge, people might be doing things with my data that I don't know about and I'm not gaining any value from. So I think in the, I don't know how soon it will be, but I think in the near future, I think consumers will want to, take more control of their data, because it is their data.
Do you think as a sector, do you think we've been behind in that data? Because obviously data, if you look at any other sectors, particularly e-commerce, but any sector now has really valuable data, and you see it, don't you? You see companies have built their valuations almost on data. But as a company, as a sector, it feels like we're behind in that kind of that wave. Is that true? Is that the right perspective?
I think we are. I think that's true. I think as a sector, not particularly financial advice businesses, but more the companies they face off to, we're definitely not as digitally advanced or data advanced as even the banking world. We're light years behind retail digital solutions, Deliveroo, eBay and Uber and the such like. But from a data perspective, I think we are. For example, we get asked all the time, actually, from new startup fintechs, "Oh, you guys have got lots of pension data, haven't you? Our customers or our new customers would love to show that up in our app." And we just can't do it. We just, it's not our data to do that with. And I think in the future, consumers, customers, clients, if they want their data in that new fintech, I think they should be allowed to show it there.
Yeah, and what's the general sense at the moment with you and Origo in terms of, the technology's been painfully slow in our sector, painfully slow. But a lot of these podcasts, it kind of, for me in particular, it feels like it's speeding up and is about to speed up. Are you guys optimistic on that? Do you think that's going to happen? Are you seeing that at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. I think it really is inevitable. I think, and I've been on a bit of a roadshow myself, actually, meeting chief execs and other senior people from the big, pension investment, life insurance firms and platforms. And they're definitely attuned to that. Big themes for them are around how do we reduce our costs? I don't mean particularly, get rid of staff. I mean with our systems and our processes, how do we make things more efficient? And absolutely the number one theme, and I did a post about this on LinkedIn recently, number one theme is how can we make ourselves easier to do business with for financial advisors? Whether you believe that or not, because you're experiencing what you're experiencing, they're absolutely adamant that that's the thing that's driving their development spends and their strategies and so on. So whilst it's definitely not perfect and there's a long way to go and it is behind other industries, there's definitely a desire. And I think we are beginning to see some pretty good examples of new bits of tech that that will make things more efficient. A blatant plug, apologies, but we've launched something called Unipath Letter of Authority, which digitizes that horrible paper and post process when you get a new client and you need to find out all about all their existing stuff. So there's now a digital solution for that. It's early days, and we will by the end of the year have about 10 or 11 platforms and providers signed up. Again, the pipeline's really good. So we'll get there with that. So yeah, there are some really encouraging signs, but I think it's inevitable. If not, then somebody else will come and do it.
In those conversations, because you've got quite a unique position that you almost sit in the middle in terms of the providers and the financial advisors. In those conversations, is there a reluctance from some of the companies to move to the new world in terms of digital? Because obviously we hear a lot of frustration with advisors, having to deal with legacy platforms, like legacy providers, get information, all that sort of stuff. And it's why your new tool is going to be so valuable, but it's very, very difficult to get this information. I mean, to go back to your original point, the idea of paying someone else to speak on the phone and get information is crazy, isn't it? But are we going to see, AI come into that? Are we going to see companies investing in that in terms of reducing cost and actually becoming more efficient? Is that going to happen quickly in your view?
Yeah, I mean, for the first part of the question, is there an intention, an intent to do it? I think so. I mean, there's definitely no hidden agenda, which is if I take 6 months for this transfer to go through, or if I take 15 weeks to answer this letter of authority, I get to keep that customer for another month or two or whatever. There's no agenda there. So
is that a process and technology problem then?
Absolutely is.
Interesting.
It's legacy processes getting in the way. We've got lots of stuff to do. And we've got some, mandatory things to do, and we need to do that first. And it's kind of not getting to. So there's definitely a desire there. I mean, no doubt about that. I've worked in big, pension insurance companies. They want to do it. They want to be easy to do business with. So they're not happy with the service that they're providing. So please don't think that. But it's just they're not quite there yet. I mean, there was one brilliant example of. It was actually the letter of authority thing where one brand, I won't say it was, said, we're dead keen on this, we want to implement it, but we're too busy right now dealing with letters of authority to implement your new letters of authority thing. So there's definitely a desire, but it's just not quite there yet, I would say.
So the question on my mind then, if it's not quite there yet, so we've done the open banking, which has helped, I think, quite a lot, but not quite as much as people probably expected in terms of what they thought that would come. We've obviously got pension dashboard that's been on the agenda for many years. We hope that helps, and that will hopefully be rolled out some point soon. I don't think we know yet when that will be rolled out. It keeps seeming to be put back. But then in the back of my mind, we've got this new technology, which is artificial intelligence and all that sort of stuff that big companies are investing in at the moment. I'm going to get Hargreaves Lansdowne at some point to come on the podcast because they've been using artificial intelligence in some of their processes. It kind of feels like that could happen quite quickly, which is an interesting space for us to be in right now that is not necessarily by design, but will be happening anyway.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think we've all been amazed, haven't we, in the last, 6 months, maybe 12 months. ChatGPT is probably the best and most widely available example of what AI can do. It's the first time that AI's been something that big businesses have been using a bit to anybody can get access to it. And I saw some really interesting research that was done looking at the power of AI and being no doubt all the world's knowledge is already plugged into these big language models already. The whole internet is already there. So it's pretty intelligent. But there was some research done around it took really expensive, really experienced and therefore expensive writers of press releases. And it took junior university graduates who had just joined a comms team, and it gave them the challenge of writing press releases. And it doesn't take a genius to work out that the more experienced ones got more mentions, more positivity from the titles that they were targeting within it, and the junior ones were less successful. They worked out a sort of percentage for that quality and volume. They then give the graduates access to artificial intelligence, it's actually ChatGPT, and said, you use that to create. And they did it in an iterative way. It's it's a very it's not a do this please and it does it. You can fine tune it. So anyway, do the press release using that, and actually those people outperformed the £100,000 a year plus people who were just doing it through their own experience and their own through their own thoughts. And so that's quite something, the fact that a young graduate can do that. Now, if you give that to the really experienced people, just imagine what you could do, even better at doing it. So I think it actually does have the potential to, in the next 12 months, I think we will begin to see, examples of the big providers, platforms using artificial intelligence. Having said that, I'd probably rather that they made it easy for you to change address for your client, in a very simple way first before they thought about the shiny new thing. But I think that we'll see adoption of that much quicker than adoption of
which is really interesting that you mentioned that. So, really what we're dealing with is a lot of these firms haven't got the data in order, probably, or processes to get the most out of this kind of technology. So maybe in this space, what I'm kind of alluding to is the progress will probably be slower, as it always is.
Yeah, I mean, of course, wrong data in artificial intelligence. Well, ironically, you can use AI to try and improve the quality of the data. You can have as good as goes anybody at trying to improve that. Match customers to maybe through fuzzy logic and all that kind of stuff. But you're right. At the end of the day, if the data's crap, the output's going to be crap. To use a very technical term. So you're right. So, and I think things like the dashboard, and I'll talk about progress on that in a second, actually, if it's okay, because I'm a little bit close to it.
Well, let's talk about that, because I think it's relevant. So, for our listeners, where are we up to? What's happening? What's the outcome that you guys want to achieve with that?
Absolutely. When your listeners might not know, actually, that Origo is a supplier to government. So we're building with Capgemini, the core architecture for the pensions dashboard. In fact, we've now built it. So there's been a reset. I think everybody knows that. While the program really gets ready to begin onboarding pension companies soon. I really do not know, actually, but very soon, in the next few weeks, short months, there will be an announcement around staging dates. So the pension companies will be told when they're expected to connect to the pensions dashboard. We already know from an announcement that everybody needs to be on by October 2026.
Okay, so very much like
it's happening.
It's great. It's very much like when the HMRC did the Making Tax Digital kind of piece to say, we're doing it, you're going to have to do it, and there's a deadline for you to basically adopt, digital accounting.
Absolutely, and the pension regulator has said that any firm who doesn't have an extraordinary excuse for not hitting a staging date will be in breach. The FCA are beginning to be quite vocal around expectations around saying that to us. So this is happening. It has been, I can understand for the industry, been frustrating. I think it's a prize worth waiting for from a financial advisor's perspective. The not needing to ask a client, who have you got your pensions with? That it will be presented with it. And financial advisors will be able to see their clients' data. So there is going to be
I think it's massively exciting. I think it's massively exciting. I mean, we're recording this podcast the day after the autumn statement. So obviously you've probably seen a load of autumn statement summaries, but I think one of the things that they alluded to was is it a pot for life? I think they mentioned in it. So the idea of a pot for life and a pension dashboard feels like if they can get the two together, might be a lot of progress in that area.
I think so. I mean, I think my personal view would be that you've got dashboard, you've got potentially a pot for life, and you've got potentially an idea of some consolidators who might sweep up small pots. Do we need all of it? I'm not convinced about. But actually, they're all well-intended potential pieces of legislation. One of the unintended consequences of auto-enrollment was the proliferation of small pots. You work somewhere for 6 months, you get 3 months contributions, and then you leave and you forget about it. So pension dashboard will show people, remind people where they've got stuff, and then we want to make it easy as an industry for them to tidy that up. So those schemes would do that. So I think it'll take a long time. If you look how long the pension dashboard took to go from an idea to October 2026, you're talking a decade.
What kind of data can we expect from that kind of dashboard?
Dashboard. The data is quite thin, actually, deliberately thin, because so it'll be the client's name, a list of the pensions they've got, and this is really important, actually, it'll be the valuation, and also an indication of their income in retirement. So there'll be an industry-wide consistent approach to calculating that. So there's no benefit to somebody saying, well, it's going to be more. It's going to be the same calculation. But that's important because the whole policy intent from the dashboard is that people get engaged with their financial futures. They see a number in their 30s that they don't like, so they've got enough time to do something about it, go and get advice, for example.
Yeah.
So, but other than that, it's not at this early stage going to contain the cost of the fund or the funds, anything like that. It's the value, the date of the value, and then the indication of the income in retirement. Very simple for consumers. So it's not going to replace contract inquiry or the details that you get from a letter of authority, for example. Deliberately very thin so that the consumer, the citizen acts.
Okay, so let's talk about what you're worried about. In terms of, there's a lot of financial technology coming into the market at the moment. There's a lot of startups. What do you think the threats are at the moment? I mean, we kind of thought that robo-advice would be a threat, but that hasn't played out. So what's on your mind in that area?
Yeah, I mean, robo-advice, even in America, that was further advanced than the UK. It was relatively small compared to either DIY or more likely financial advice. I used to have a boss who came from Charles Schwab, one of the biggest, and he was making that same point. This is never going to be mainstream. It's always going to be fairly niche. I think artificial intelligence could, make it better, make it feel more like an interaction. But I don't see that as a threat to proper advice, which is really, really nuanced. I don't worry about much. I mean, I suppose if I do, I do worry about. We're probably going to get a new government within the next 2 years, and I do worry about. And it'll be, I think, a Labour government coming in again, very well intended, but whole, swathes of new rules and so on, which it's very actually distracting for the big pension and investment companies. If they've got to comply with these new rules, it takes a lot of their development budget, a lot of their focus, and so on. So I do worry about, albeit well-intended, potential new legislation just distracting us, because we're actually, there's real focus right now on being more efficient, doing better for advisors and for their clients. I mean, and so on.
It's a really good point. It's a really good point. So, we talked about consumer duty. Consumer duty is very well intended. I think it's a very good piece of regulation, but it's a massive cost burden to everyone in the sector. So, when we've got regulators that come in and tell us what to do and how to do it and all that sort of stuff and expect us to comply, that's fine. But on the other side, like, we lack innovation because we're too busy complying with the regulations. So, it's interesting you bring that point up about potentially more regulations coming in, different governments. It kind of takes our eyes off innovating, doesn't it? Creativity.
It does. Sadly, it does, because there's limited resources, limited budgets. I mean, one firm I work with typically would spend 100 million a year on developments. And, as a director of proposition and, one of those businesses, you're thinking, great, there's plenty of money for me to enhance my proposition, be better and easier to do business with for advisors, for example. But typically the first 50, 60 million of it was mandatory stuff. So again, back to what I said before, there's no hidden agenda. There's no let's make things crap so that we can hold on to the money. It really isn't. It's just stuff gets in the way. That's what the issue is.
Yeah. And what are you excited about? What do you think the opportunities are in the next few years? And I mean, I know you're excited about your letter of authority tool, which I think is going to be a big deal in our sector. That's a real issue within our sector in terms of letter of authorities. But what else are you excited about? It doesn't necessarily need to be Origo based in terms of the development of the financial services sector.
Yeah, so I am excited about AI. I think it is a real deal. So we've talked around that, and I would actually encourage your firms to, in a safe way, please don't put clients' data into AI in a very unsafe way. But I'd encourage firms to think about, well, what use cases within my business might this be able to help? Whether it might be, client communications or drafting, letters or whatever, and just experiment with that. I would encourage that. So I'm excited about that for our business, for the whole market. I'm definitely excited about the dashboard from a consumer perspective. The reason I come to work is that what gets me passionate is that, let's be honest, and I think financial advisors might be a little bit immune to this because they only see people who want and need financial advice. There's the other 90% of people who probably should be getting advice, so I think the dashboard is going to be a real catalyst for people engaging with their financial futures, saving more, getting more advice, getting more involved in where they're invested and so on. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, do you just on that? Do you see a future where, there's two different camps in terms of the advice gap. Some advisors think that's not our problem, and some advisors think yes, that is our problem. Do you foresee a future where that gets solved?
Probably not solved, but I think it can be improved. I think if we can, well, you talked about robo-advice, and I think it's often seen as a threat to financial advice, another way of getting advice from a machine. But actually, I predict that, and we're already seeing this, advice firms will actually use tools like that to begin their journey with their potential new clients or clients who perhaps haven't come back for further advice.
Like an incubator type service.
Yeah. And they can be triaged into full advice beyond that. So I can see that happening. And yeah, I think the other thing I'm excited about really is just those providers being able to do what they want to do, which is actually be better at doing business with. I think we're beginning to see that turn. They know there's a lot to do, but I think that if we don't get lots of distracting legislation that doesn't actually have much impact, I think over the next 2 or 3 years we will see things getting better.
Yeah, that feels to me like the general theme at the moment is technology around us seems to be getting better and faster all the time. So it's good to hear from someone like you that sits in between that area where you speak to both parties. Anything that Origo are doing that's exciting in the next, couple of years, or you're thinking about? Are you thinking about AI, investing in that area?
Well, we are. I suppose the two areas that we think are interesting and could be future things that Origo does. One is we talked about data. So how can we do better things with the billions of data items that go through our processes? We'd bring our customers with us, we'd bring advisors with us. Well, I'm not saying we're going to steal all the data and do things to make money with it. It really is about how can we do better things for the customer. So that's one thing. The other thing, again, we've got on our sites is consumer identity. It's just awful in the UK. The UK is really backwards when it comes to identity. So in the advice world, you win a new client, you need to make sure that it really is them from a know your customer perspective, anti-money laundering perspective. And we don't have a sort of standardized way of doing that in the UK. So if you're a consumer, you're asked to prove your identity all the time, and it's always in different ways through proprietary services. If you're even some of the big life insurance businesses, different departments have different techniques for asserting the identity of the potential customer or the customer. So I think that's something that's fixable. I think Origo could play a good role.
That's interesting because it's changing all the time as well, isn't it? Because of unfortunately we're surrounded by scams at the moment. So when I open my banking app, every few years, the way they verify me seems to be different every time because they're having to keep up with the legislation. But having said that, they're following a standard. They seem to all follow the same.
They're beginning to. Yeah, they're beginning to. Yeah. I think that's probably more to do with the fact that the underlying technology might be from the similar 2 or 3 businesses rather than standard way of doing it. So that's interesting for us. And I suppose the other thing that is of interest is and it's just gone out of my mind. But it's this idea that I suppose that's probably a failing of Origo is that at the moment we've got 8 different services, and they were all thought of at different stages in our life, and traditionally we've sold them one by one, really. But if you think about it, you can imagine a journey where we'll take an advice journey. So new client comes into a firm, you're presented with their pension dashboard. Again, we're doing the technology for that, data in the one screen. Right, let's get all the information. Let's send a letter of authority, Unipass letter of authority. Right, great. Give the advice. We're not going to get involved in the advice giving, but we can provide the data for it. Right, we think the best idea is to consolidate with this platform. You can open up a new account through Origo's integration hub on that platform. You can initiate the transfers into that newly opened account. You can track them. So I think one thing we're definitely working towards is sort of almost like a more holistic Origo type journey to help.
Yeah, so bringing all the technology you currently have just into one journey. Yeah, interesting.
Bit of a no-brainer for us, really, that we should have thought of, but we have now.
That's great. Any final thoughts? Any things that you think financial planners should be, thinking about in terms of action steps or just ideas, before we close out?
Yeah, I've been learning about NextGen Planners and really, really impressed. And I think, so carry on would be my message. Please continue being vocal about what frustrates you all, and be demanding on the industry. We did some research a few years ago now, but the number one thing that influences development roadmap within a big pension company or an investment company, life insurance company, is what advisors want. So remember that. Yeah. And keep up the good work. But and I look forward to working closer. One request would be actually, I'd love people to try out the Unipass letter of authority. Please don't expect the whole industry at the other side is going to be there straight away. Yeah. It does produce just one pack at the end for those that are not signed up. It requires just one client signature, which can be done digitally. But I'd love feedback on it. And it's only if both advisors and providers and platforms get together that we can solve that problem. So I'd love to, and just come directly to me with your feedback.
Okay. Sounds great. Our listeners and members are very good at giving direct feedback, so that's going to be very helpful. Anthony, massive thank you for joining us on the podcast, and we'll see you soon.
You're very welcome. Thank you.